Glasses look good, are those new?
Yeah, you're the first person. Jimmy Blank said he didn't much care for me because he was afraid it made my bottom look big.
So it seems to be connected now. Did you want to get to something else?
Just my agenda. Nope.
No, where, right here.
Yeah, that's all I need. That's the only thing I ever use it for.
Do you want my copy, paper copy, in case it's...
No, I pulled a few things out that I needed. This is here. You showed up.
I showed up there.
Just didn't know if we was going to have to call you and wake you up from your nap or not.
How you say? Always here. Always.
Yeah.
Jennifer Mooney.
I don't think I'm going to be a success.
Gosh.
Well, welcome everyone. This is June the 10th, 2019. Once again, welcome. First is our public hearing on plan of services and a resolution 1789 to annex .685 acres at 471 Parkway Road and to incorporate same within the corporate boundaries of the city of Tullahoma, Tennessee. So anyone here wishes to address the council on that issue? Yes, sir. Let me ask you to step to the microphone. And sir, if you would, provide your name and address, please.
Good evening. My name is Howard Wright. I'm the owner or purchaser of 471 Parkway Road, the tract of land in question here. I wish to tell why we are requesting this. My wife and I both have strokes and we're both partially paralyzed. So a year or so ago, we considered the possibility of selling our property and moving into the city of Tullahoma so we could take advantage of city available bus system and so forth. But we have since found out that we are not physically able to pack up everything and make the move. Since we have neighbors that are already in the city, we considered that as a better option for us. And we would like to have our property moved into the city so that we can take advantage of city facilities.
Very good. Thank you. That's an excellent explanation. Thank you, sir. Anyone else in the audience wish to address the board at this time? So we appreciate the opportunity and we'll be voting on this very shortly.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
We'll have to vote for that.
Okay, no one else. We'll go to our second public hearing on the proposed annual budget ordinance for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2019 and in June 30th, 2020. Anyone here wish to address the board on that issue? Seeing none, we will proceed. First is the roll call. Ms. Golden.
Mayor Curley.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem King.
Here.
Alderperson Blanks. Duncan.
Here.
Dunn. Noes. Mathis.
Here.
The chair detects a quorum. We will proceed. Very pleased that Reverend Lynn Hendricks is with us this evening. I ask that Reverend Lynn Hendricks provide an invocation this evening. Ask everyone to please stand and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Reverend Hendricks.
Thank you. Let us pray. Our God and our Father, we believe that by your revelation you have established that no authority exists anywhere without your divine providence. And so we ask that you would enable these that you have chosen to serve the community and serve you in such a way as to promote justice and peace and mercy and order. We pray for our city that you would prosper Tullahoma. We ask that you would do this to your glory. Thank you so much for all the departments that serve so well. And I pray that you would give your blessing upon them as well. We thank you for all this in the name of the one true God. Amen.
Amen.
Would you please join me in the pledge to the flag? I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Reverend Hendricks. Okay, we have one young person to recognize this evening, and we all appreciate and look forward to recognizing the achievements and accomplishments of our young people. And so Alderman Dunn would like to make a presentation at this time. Alderman Dunn, the floor is yours.
Absolutely. So Juliet Herrera, would you like to approach the podium? We had a contest with the freshman class of Tullahoma High School about domestic violence and the just to make people more aware of the nuances of it, that it's really not at all about love, but more about control. And Juliet created a wonderful public service announcement video for that just last month. Do you want to talk about your experience with that?
Well, at the time when the contest was proposed, I was in the middle of a musical at my high school, and I was very busy with that. So I didn't have a lot of time to really put it together. But by the time the show was over, we still had about a week left until the due date for the video. So I got together some people that I knew from the show that I was in, because I knew that we all had similar schedules, and asked them if they could get together with me and help me put this together, because I knew it was something that I was really interested in and something that I really wanted to do.
Well, thank you very much. You brought some folks with you.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about them?
Recognize your teachers.
Well, these are the Millers. They're my very close friends and role models. So I invited them with me.
What attracted you to this contest?
Well, pretty much my entire life, I've always been really interested in the different types of arts. I've been doing theater since I was in the 5th grade, and I've been wanting to expand my horizons when it came to the different arts that I've been experiencing, and filmmaking was something that I hadn't tried out yet. So this was really, it first drew me in because it was a video contest, and it was something that I really wanted to try. But I also knew that the topic was something that, though it's talked about very commonly, domestic violence in our society, it's not something that's talked about within our schools as much as it is in just out in the open. So it's something that I definitely thought was really important and something that should be addressed in the high school level.
Thank you, Juliet. Do the Millers have anything they'd like to add?
Floor is yours. Okay.
You did an outstanding job, Juliet. Outstanding job. So can I present this now?
Please.
Okay. All right.
How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm 15 years old.
Okay, I want you to think for just a minute. When you were 15 years old, could you have stood up and done what she just did? I think that's remarkable, actually. I'm really proud of her.
She certainly stands out with
Yeah.
her class. So I'll just go ahead and read this if I can. Juliet created an outstanding video showcasing the subtleties of domestic violence and the red flags of early relationships. Juliet's video has been used to raise awareness with other students in her school. So in honor of her accomplishments, I'm just going to bring this to you.
These guys in the back. Go ahead and fold it all the way back. Yeah, there you go.
Smash the button.
I love you. If you love me, don't talk to me. If you love me, don't go to that party. If you love me, delete her number. If you love me, let me check your phone. If you love me, let's see how lucky you are to be about it. If you love me, let's stop embarrassing me in front of people. If you love me, you would just listen to me for once.
I'm sorry.
You're so lucky I love you.
Do you love me?
Of course I do.
Can I go out with some friends?
No, I don't trust them.
Can I see your phone?
How dare you ask?
Do you love me?
Of course.
Why do you hit me?
Because I love you and I want you to understand.
Can I have some space?
Oh, here we go again. Why don't you love me?
I do.
Well done. Very well, Joan. That was awesome. Awesome job. Thank you. Yeah, she did a great job. Appreciate it. So it's really important that we get that word out. So she did great.
So, are you prepared to say who the actors were? If not, that's fine.
Well, I invited them with me today, but they weren't able to make it. But that was Haley Overholser and Garrett Sanders. They were both in the production.
Yeah, good. Thanks again. Good job. Proud of you. Okay, Mrs. Moody, you've got some very special people to introduce tonight. I'm looking forward to this. Mrs. Moody, recognized at the podium.
I do. It's my honor each month we recognize employees of the month and sometimes one employee or a group of employees for an exceptional job, or it could be their attitude or the way that they approach their work. In some way or another, they exhibit the values that we hope all employees have as they're conducting their work. And so this month, I want to invite Butch Taylor, our Public Works Director, up. We're actually honoring 2 of our street crews, and they were nominated by one of our residents who wrote in a really heartfelt letter, and I won't read the entire letter unless you want me to. I'll just
Go ahead, it's an excellent letter.
Okay.
As long as you've got permission to read it, I assume.
Okay. Dear Mr. West, it was written to their supervisor. I wanted to tell you and the men who worked so hard to repair the sinkhole between my house on 104 St. Charles Place and my neighbor at 102 how much I appreciate everyone's efforts. Unfortunately, such diligence and great performance has not been my experience in other places and at other times. I think that we all may feel a pinch when we get the property tax bill, often asking ourselves if the services we receive will turn out to be worth the cost. However, thinking about the convenience of not having to get rid of our own waste, do required police work, put out fires, and keep the roads in good shape puts a new perspective on the question. I'm now sure that this project was well worth the years of taxes I've paid and that they were a good investment. The men who worked on this project exhibited exceptional skills and great attitudes. I spent some time watching them work. They all seem to know their jobs very well. The work is difficult physically and is far out of range of my old body's capabilities. I tried to stay out of their way and not interfere, but I was curious to see the fundamental problems that caused the sinkhole. As they dug, it was like seeing the history of that piece of land unfolding before my eyes. Each of the men was friendly, polite, answered all my questions patiently, and even laughed at my jokes. I thanked them myself, but maybe a note in their personnel files commending them would be in order. And that was from Mr. Robert Hickey in Tullahoma. And so tonight, I'm very honored to recognize these two crews. We actually had two different street crews work on this project. So if they will come up, anyone that's here? Are they all here? Okay. So I'll read all their names. We had Randy Boyette, Norman Fannin, Steve Hayworth, Kenny Howard, Jamie Moore, and Michael Sparks. And these are our June Employees of the Month. Yeah.
Doing your job.
Do it with pride.
That's it. Man, we appreciate all of our staff, and
Sure.
They do a good job, and these are just three of our
I agree.
representatives. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Just spend out here.
Thank you so much.
Come on in there, boy.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor, Ms. Moody. Okay, we're now ready for citizen comments. Anyone in the audience wish to address the board at this time? All right, we will proceed. As some of you might know, for 8 years I served in the Tennessee General Assembly from 1984 to 1992. And I always found it to be a challenge to be able to communicate with citizens as to different pieces of legislation that were passed that affected the area that I represented. And so from time to time I would present summaries, and so as everyone knows, Representative Rush Bricken is our state representative. And so I asked Mr. Representative Bricken if he would to come to the meeting tonight and just share with us a few of the pieces of legislation that passed and have been signed by the governor that would affect all of us as citizens. So I'm pleased to welcome Representative Bricken. I ask you to come to the podium and share with us some things that you think are important to the Tullahoma citizens. So welcome.
Oh, thanks. Again, it's an honor to be here. Thank you, Mayor, for this invitation, and thank you, Aldermen, for allowing me to be here and early on the agenda, so that's great. So, first of all, it is an honor to be the new representative for the 47th District here in Coffee and Happelhorn County. Again, if you heard me talk, I will say it's been a long time since I've been a freshman in anything, and but now that I'm over my freshman session, I'm not sure if I'm going to be called a sophomore next year or not. But it was a great experience being your representative in Nashville, and certainly I do believe my experience on the county commission and banking and my CPA background has certainly allowed me to kind of get my feet on the ground faster than maybe some of the younger representatives, but it still was quite an experience. So, and I can spend some time on that, but I know my time's limited, so I'll get kind of straight to the issues that y'all kind of want to talk about. There was 1,543 bills introduced in the House this year. 540 bills passed. 16 of those 540 failed to get through the Senate, and only one bill so far has failed to get the governor's signature. So, but anyway, of the 540 pieces of legislation, that's a lot of legislation. I call them, there are a lot of big bills and there are a lot of little bills. I don't all have time to talk about the little bills, so let's talk about the big bills, the bills that really affect all the Tennesseans and therefore everyone, all Tullahoma citizens. The budget is probably the biggest bill that passes, as you know, Mayor. $38.5 billion was the state's budget this year. Of that, the governor and Governor Bill Lee certainly had an emphasis on a couple of areas: education, healthcare, corrections. I'm going to try to follow my notes a little bit here so I don't forget anything. Of that $38.5 billion, one thing you do learn as early as a representative, and you're told this in many meetings, that you really only have control over probably less than 2 or 1% of that $38.5 billion budget, which is a little bit shocking. What means 99% of the budget are hard baked into existing programs of the state. So unless you go through a massive change of programs, you've already committed 99% of the state's funding. And that's for education, care, Department of Corrections, and transportation. Then there's probably 30 or 40 other departments that would get the rest of it. So you're dealing with a little bit of the new money. Now, one thing, I'm going to jump around a little bit. I'm sure y'all have heard about the Wayfair decision dealing with online sales tax. That is still kind of working the impact through the state revenues, which will come back into the city's revenues. That deals with the online sales tax. It's estimated to be in the several $100 million of additional sales tax revenue that the state will collect because of that decision. And of course, Tullahoma should get an allocation of that based on whatever formula they figure out. So anyway, that new money was somewhat wanted to be protected in this year's budget. So a couple of pieces, you might have to cut me off on time. One of it is to build up the state's rainy day fund, the state's reserve fund. It currently was sitting at $800 million, and this year's budget will raise it to $1.1 billion, which is about 7% of the state's revenue. And that's, is some smart economist says, that's about the right amount in case the state, which we hadn't had a big recession since 2007 and 8, but recessions will occur. And by building up this reserve fund, hopefully when those recessions occur, we won't have to raise taxes to maintain the programs of the state. We can pull down those reserves. But we're adding $222 million this year. Now next year, and this is kind of what I think is a big piece of local, hopefully future benefit. Once that budget is sitting at the right reserve level, I'm going to say $1.1 billion. Next year, if the revenues come through, if we don't have recessions, that should allow several $100 million of revenue that can be used for programs throughout the state. Now, the state seems to want to keep things in non-reoccurring programs for that, rather than committing forever and ever on a program. And I think for communities, it would provide grant dollars, primarily new grant dollars for arts, parks. One of my things that I think we're personally need more, not only in Tullahoma, but throughout the district, is sidewalks. And they're expensive, but I think for safety, they're really necessary. So one of the things I certainly will hope to do as a representative is look to sponsor legislation that if this money is available for grants, for sidewalks, But during y'all's work sessions, when y'all can think of grants that are needed here, I'm sure if they're needed here, they're needed in other cities throughout the state, communicate that to fellow mayors in y'all's conferences and seminars. So next year, when the next session occurs, we can have legislation there to hit the ground. So anyway, that I think is an important part that we need to be very mindful of. There was $200 million more set aside for education this year. BEP was fully funded, so I don't know if school board's here, but they got all the money that they previously received, maybe that's right, English. And then there was an additional $71 million for teachers' pay raises. So that certainly is very important for in the education area to certainly fully fund the education programs and certainly provide very needed raises for our teachers. Also, $40 million was added this year. $30 million was added to already the existing $10 million for school safety, for providing SROs in every school in the state. If they already had SROs, that money could be allocated to other security measures, whether it's equipment, structures, things like that. So locally, that should, benefit Tullahoma and the school systems here. Local, I'm going to, again, keep jumping around a little bit. 3 pieces of local legislation or legislation that I personally sponsored. One, I know y'all have had discussions about dealing with the local hotel motel tax. That was requested by the county commission. Senator Bowling and I carried it through the General Assembly and it passed. It has not been ratified yet by the full county commission, but I think it's coming up on the agenda. So that's going to raise about $350,000 of additional revenue for the county, and directly or indirectly, that certainly impacts the citizens of Tullahoma by hopefully reducing some property tax increase there. The other bill that I sponsored was, if y'all remember that the county got sued for $1 million for employee claim that had treble damages with. Well, the legislation I sponsored did away with the treble damages, left what's normal in lawsuits dealing with this kind, just compensatory damages. So hopefully a county or municipality won't face the cost that Coffee County faced last year with that additional $1 million they had to pay out. The other legislation was a professional license for veteran spouses. So when a military person moves into the area, if their spouse is professionally licensed, they can begin work immediately here rather than having to get relicensed in Tennessee. So that was a request by the human resource people at Arnold and also the base in Clarksville. So I was real proud to get that legislation through. So those are 3 local bills I'm real proud of or involved with. All right, y'all want to ask questions? I can keep going more.
Well, I'm trying to finish up in about 5 minutes, Representative Bacon. What did the legislation pass that says you can't talk on the cell phone?
Yep.
So it's a couple of things like that.
Handheld devices will no longer be, you can no longer talk holding your cell phone or texting holding your device.
While driving.
While driving. Yeah. If your car is parked, you can use it. That is effective July 1st. The first fines, I think it start off at $50 and then they go to $100. I'm not sure what sequence, but that is out there. So law enforcement will have a tool there and hopefully the state will publicize it. Georgia passed that legislation a year earlier than Tennessee, and they've already seen a significant reduction in deaths and fatalities with distracted drivers. So it really is effective, but it needs to be communicated. I hope there's some public service announcements that the state will put out. I should look at my notes so I can be sure I didn't forget anything overly important. A lot of mental health initiatives and law enforcement corrections were passed this year, which are very important bills. Broadband, again, for rural areas, again, it doesn't directly affect Tullahoma, but $20 million of additional grants around the state for expanding broadband to the rural areas was certainly initiated. A lot of legislation dealing with elderly abuse, and certainly putting more penalties, civil and criminal penalties for it, along with establishing an elder abuse task force to look for additional ways to prevent that. We did cut taxes in several areas. The professional privilege tax was reduced by $45 million, which exempted, I think, at least 15 new professions. Sadly, Mike, not attorneys, so you still have to pay your $400 a year, but we appreciate it. But realtors, chiropractors. Oh yeah, all right. So you get half the benefit. Good. So anyway, next year, if the revenues come through, we hope to eliminate the rest of the professional taxes. But they felt like they needed to do it somewhat in a piecemeal fashion. So, any other questions?
Good report. Any questions? Any comment, Mr. Ellis, Mr. Mathis, Duncan, Ms. King, Ms. Stone? Everybody good?
I think you're doing a fantastic job.
Yeah.
Thank
Well,
you.
appreciate you saying that. But please, y'all look at things that y'all, in y'all's committee meetings and things, especially along the grant levels. And just because it's not an existing grant, if there's something that's needed that could be a new grant idea, please pass it on, because that is what I think is more likely to get passed through future sessions. So,
Very good.
thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Aldermen.
again.
Always look forward to seeing y'all. So
Thank you.
call me anytime.
Thank you. Okay, ready for board reports. Mr. Mathis?
No report tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Duncan?
Thank you, Mayor. I've been pretty active here since last time. I did a University of the South. I've been working with the history department for some time, doing some documentation of work up there, and we did have one event, which is one of two that will be happening. The other one in July. Attended a luncheon at Alabama A&M for volunteer teachers, which I've been part of that program for a little while. And one of the highlight of all my activities was Mr. Tommy Gwynn's 100th birthday party, held right over down the street here by his church, First Baptist Church. And Mr. Gwynn was just elated as to how much, I guess, everybody appreciated him. And he was presented with a sword, and the news media was there, and they've done several recaps of that. Some of the other news stations. In fact, one of the stations, Representative Rose came to his house the other day, and he called me, said they were coming, and to meet him over there, and I did. I met him. We had a great time, and Mr. Gwynn he was just all over the place. They're going to help him get the medals that he lost in his fire, the ones that he doesn't have now. So for everybody that doesn't know, Mr. Gwynn fought in World War II and Korea, was captured twice, escaped twice. He has the highest medals from the French government, the United States government, and the Korean government. And Korea wrote a book about him. South Korea wrote a book about him, and I couldn't read a word of it, but it has his picture in there, and that's good. And so and so many other things that he's done and been a part of. That medals that he's got so many medals, they would line up one of these big wall panels just, completely, and they do. And so he's just, he's an asset to the community, just the history that he has, and I just enjoy talking with him, and he's a good character. You know that, though. Anyway, that was Mr. Gwynn. So we celebrated CD Stamps Day. I'm the chairman of the Davidson Academy Reunion Committee, which we're going to have the reunion this year. And CD Stamps was our professor. He was over that school from 1924 until it closed, Davidson Academy School. And so you deemed it June 6th, CD Stamps Day several years ago. So we celebrated CD Stamps Day, and Dr. Devin DeLauder, a local product here, came back, and he did his dissertation on Professor Stamps' history. And he came back and just gave us all that information. It was just a blessing to have him here with us. I attended the PBA meeting, which is the Conference Center Board of Directors, and pretty much, that's pretty much it. Went through the nursing homes yesterday and had a visit quite a few people there yesterday, both of them, so good time.
Ms. King?
Well, since last week, when we met, I went and did my monthly bingo with the Morning Point residents. So we always have a good time. It's always enjoyable. So they brighten your day, that's for sure. That's
Did you win anything?
They win things. I bring them prizes. They love it.
Ms. Dunn?
Okay, so I've got 3 things that I wanted to talk about, and it was really obvious this week that one of my main jobs at sitting on this board is to provide a safe place to live. So I've had several people contact me about these scooters that are in Nashville. I personally don't know that they are coming to Tullahoma, but I would hate to be on the other end of this without some sort of preemptive prevention there, because I just don't know that we've got the means to enforce any sort of laws with it. So anyway, Mr. Steve Worshman's going to be helping me with that. The second thing is the domestic violence, and I thank Juliet one more time for that. What she did was the first of many things that I think our task force is going to be looking at as far as how we can help our citizens here. And she said it really well. This is something that needs to be talked about in high school, and I became aware through this task force that domestic violence is considered a gateway topic and is not something that you are allowed to discuss in a high school. There were several topics that I remember we weren't allowed to talk about, parental planning, those kinds of things, but domestic violence was one of those that and no teachers are allowed to discuss. So I hope that Mr. Representative Bricken can help us make that a thing of the past, because we are number 4 on in the United States is domestic murders, and we can't have that anymore. So the third thing was stormwater. We had our stormwater meeting on Thursday. That was outstanding. We had 20 people there, and it was so nice to see people who were deeply concerned about what happens whenever it rains here, and how quickly the safety of our roads changes in just a few minutes if it's really pouring. So I know that Ms. Moody has talked to me about in 2021 we will adopt the new standards set forth by TDEC. But between now and then, there's a lot we can do as citizens without mandates. If this is something that's important to you, we can do things on the grassroots level and help neighborhood by neighborhood. So if this is something that you're interested in, I hope that people will come to our Go Green meetings the first Monday of each month. So thank you. 5 o'clock right here.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Dunn. Mr. Norris, Alderman Norris.
Mayor, I have no report this evening.
No problem. So a couple of things. You have in front of you a flyer, and thanks to the work of David Clark and Lynn Atteskley, we'll be offering an additional farmers market in Tullahoma. Really excited about that on the grounds of South Jackson Performing Arts Center. We've been working with them, and Greg Russell, the president of the association, has graciously allowed us to use their facility, and so it starts 1 week from tonight. The last count I saw, we would have between 15 and 20 vendors there. So there's a lot of produce that's not in just yet, but they'll be, so excited about that.
And that's a beautiful poster. I don't know who made that, but that's just really
Lisa
nice.
Claudio made that. You know Lisa?
Yes,
Yeah.
oh, it's really nice.
Yeah.
Very pretty.
Let's see. Reminder about 4:45 next, no, the 24th is the Animal Care and Control ribbon cutting. Encourage you to be there, and there's going to be some special things going on that day as well, or at that time as well. And what else was I supposed to announce? Don't forget the planning and coordinating meeting this Thursday. Some of you attend that. Then we're taking, at least 6 people have expressed interest in serving on the Board of Education. And so we're, Mrs. Robin Morrison is collecting those citizen participation forms. And so my suggestion is at our next meeting on the 24th, I know some of the people interested. I don't know some of the others, so we will invite all individuals that have expressed interest in attending to come, and we'll ask questions, and the floor will be open for any questions that anyone else would like to ask as well. This is an important appointment that we need to make. I think that's all I've got. When we get to the consent agenda in just a minute, we need to make an addition to that with your approval. But I think that's all. Okay. I think we're ready for Mr. Giffin's report. Mr. Giffin, anything to report?
I have nothing.
Okay. Thank you. Mrs. Moody.
I do. As you know, we've completed the Avoca Road traffic study, and tonight John Story with Gresham Smith is here to give a brief report on his findings.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah, I wish the representative was still here. I would thank him. As an engineer, the professional privilege tax on engineers has been rescinded, so that's good news. And Alderman Dunn, I could spend all my time talking about scooters, but feel free to give me a call and I can share some thoughts working in downtown Nashville. So I am here to discuss the Avoca Road at Riley Creek Road traffic study. My name is John Story. I'm with Gresham Smith. We're an engineering firm headquartered in Nashville. My contact information is up there. By all means, if anyone has questions, feel free to reach out to me anytime. I'll be happy to talk, certainly here and afterwards as well. So I'm going to walk through the study and basically cover it through traffic projections, traffic analysis, crash analysis, and then what we're recommending is the improvement options. So traffic projections were done because we didn't want to have recommendations that would be obsolete by the time they were built. We wanted to look at not just what the traffic conditions are now, but 20 years down the road, so that we're planning for the future with whatever solutions we came up with. I believe everyone here is probably familiar with the location, but it is just north here of downtown at the intersection of Avoca and Riley Creek Roads. So we're fortunate that this is a 3-legged intersection. It's a Y shape. And on all 3 of the legs, there were TDOT count stations nearby that had 20 years of count data. So we had good information on what the historic growth in the area looked like. The 2 legs north of the intersection have actually had negative growth, which came as a bit of a surprise. One basically flat. One, I believe it was around -1 or 2%. And then the leg at the bottom was like 1.7% positive growth. We in traffic don't like to project negative, so we projected 1% growth on the 2 legs, north legs, and then 2% on the south. We rounded up to be conservative there. And those are the trend lines on the right as far as what the traffic pattern has been doing the last 10 years. We also went out and collected fresh turning movement counts back in March when school was in session. It was important to get the counts while school was in session. And we counted morning, midday, and evening peaks. We also, when we developed our projections, we looked at the historic growth of the roads, but we also realized that might not tell the entire picture. There's 250, and I'm sorry, it's hard to see here, but shaded slightly in red, there's about 250 acres right nearby this intersection. And that has the potential with the R1 zoning that's out there to have about 400 additional homes built, before, with full build out. And that would create about 400 additional peak hour trips. So when we projected traffic, we started, and I know you can't read the numbers, but on the left was the existing turning movement counts. And then we added the background historic growth that was as if the 250 acres of developable land thereby, nothing happened, but just basically the surrounding community grew. That's that 1% and 2 and 3%. And then we looked at, okay, then we added if the full developable land were developed, and that got us our design year 2044 traffic turning movement, which is on the right. And when we did that, it means that basically the traffic could double in the next 20 years at the intersection. So we took that data and did a traffic analysis with it. With the existing traffic, there's a document called the Manual and Uniform Traffic Control Devices, and it controls, it's a federal document, it controls warrants for when you can install traffic signals, and also has guidance for all-way stops. With the existing traffic, the intersection does not meet the signal warrants, and it does not meet the guidance for an all-way stop. So the one-way stop that's out there now really is the best traffic control measure based on that analysis. And then we did a level of service analysis based on the Highway Capacity Manual, which is another the Transportation Research Board document. And the levels of service are B with existing traffic out there during all the peak hours. Then we put the projected traffic in to see, okay, well, what do we need to be prepared for in the future? What does it look like the traffic control would look like 20 years from now? Somewhat surprisingly, the projected traffic still is not projected to meet always stop or signal control guidance. And that's that nomograph chart on the right there, and that's the AM and PM traffic. And we're still in the area where a one-way stop is the most efficient traffic control methodology. And with the 2044 numbers, we still have level service B at the intersection.
What does that mean, level service B?
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. So it's just like back in school. It's letter grades A through F, and B, A is best, F is worst. F is basically, driving down a country road, you can do basically whatever speed you want. If you got 2 lanes, you can pass. You're not constrained. F is traffic's broken down and you're stuck in traffic. So B means like when you come up to the stop sign, you might have 5 or 6 seconds of delay, before you can leave. But based on, the letter grade, it's pretty good. In urban areas, we go for a level service E is often our goal with the future design year traffic. Level service D in a rural area, such as we would classify Tullahoma, would be level service D is what we would aim for with design year traffic. So we have level service B, which is pretty good. But it wasn't all about traffic operations. We want to look at the crash analysis, and that's really the most important thing. Safety is always the highest priority. It's my understanding there may be more crashes out there than are getting reported, but unfortunately in crash analysis, if it's not reported to the police, it's like it didn't happen. We did the crash analysis to TDOT standards, and the reason we did that was so that if something did pop up, you could send this to TDOT and see if maybe there were some federal funds available to help with safety improvements. So we obtained crash data from both Ms. Moody and the local police department, which is the Tullahoma data, and that was 2013 to 2019. And then we back-checked it against the Titan data, which is the state database, and we used 2015 to 2017. That's the last 3 full years of available data, which is how TDOT does their crash analysis. The data aligned as it should. It's a good sign. You know, the police department's reports are getting fed into the state system. So we'll concentrate on the Titan numbers, since those are what the state would look at if we were to go for some state or federal safety improvement money. There were 2.7 crashes per year at the intersection reported. The crash rate to the critical crash rate is 1.15, which means it's pretty average. A 1 means it's the same as the state average for a similar intersection. But what did jump out at me is 88% of those crashes resulted in an injury, and 63% were lane departure crashes. So those are pretty high numbers. And while the rate doesn't jump out, wouldn't be eligible for federal safety funds, it may be worth sending to TDOT just to have them take a look at those lane departure and high injury crashes, just to see if you could get a little bit of state or federal help with the intersection. The other thing that jumped out is 50% of the crashes were in wet weather conditions. It doesn't rain 50% of the time, so that means a lot of them are happening when it's raining. And most are southbound, which was not a surprise because you're coming from that rural type area into the developed residential area. So based on the capacity analysis and the crash analysis, we came up with really 2 improvement options. One is near term. The reason it's near term is it's all within existing right of way. You wouldn't have to acquire property from adjacent landowners. Long term would require some property acquisitions. And then before we started this, we didn't know what the numbers would say, so we just wanted to look at, because of that unusual Y configuration, if it looked like a roundabout would be a fit here. A roundabout's probably a little bit overkill now looking at the numbers, but we did look at it and cost it out. We do believe, based on highway safety manual procedures, that we can get some pretty good crash reduction percentages with our recommendations. And so this first figure is the near-term improvement option. What's shaded in orange is a high-friction surface treatment. It helps cars from skidding when the pavement's wet. We would look to realign the southbound Avoca Road approach so that it doesn't have all that pavement out there, to really make it a more traditional intersection, and quite frankly one that cars can make that move from the 2 north legs. Right now it's very difficult to go from Avoca Road on the north leg to Riley Creek on the north leg because of how the intersection's configured. We would look to have some solar flashing beacons on top of some turn signs. Based on the geometry, it's about a 20-mile-an-hour curve, and it's signed, I believe, 30, 35 through there. So it is a little tighter radius than the speed limit. So we would recommend some advisory turn signs that have a solar flashing beacon on top with advisory speed plaque to note 20 miles an hour. There's a utility pole that is very close to the road on the inside of that curve. Short term, near term, we'd really like to see a reflector put around that to grab motorists' attention as they're coming around there. And also what we call chicken tracks, but pavement markings that are the dash markings through the curve so that it helps, and through the intersection, so it directs motorists at all times. Because right now, there's a lot of pavement out there that doesn't have pavement markings due to the intersection configuration. That would free up. You would remove some of that pavement that's hatched out. That could enable a little more green space there, make it a little more attractive intersection, I believe, in that area. And then, just some additional reflectors in the road, reflectors on signposts. So that is the near-term improvements. It was, I believe, around $125,000. Does anyone have any questions on that before I go to the long-term?
Could I ask a question?
Absolutely.
You did say that there was a problem in going from Ovoca to Sharp Springs.
Being able to make that turn, yeah, not in the crash analysis, but when I went out there, when I was on Ovoca heading southbound and tried to turn north to go on Riley Creek now.
Riley Creek, I get.
Yeah, it's, it's a really tight turn, even just in a normal sized truck or car.
Why couldn't go back up Ovoca just a few yards and put a road all the way across?
You could.
Put a road across to where it connects. That way you don't ever have to go through the intersection at all. You just go that way, stop sign and go.
Yeah, you could, certainly there could be another road to provide connectivity between the two.
Would that not be a pretty good idea? I'm gonna ask you.
So let me see if I'm clear. You talk about where the intersection is. Now, the city, it's my understanding, Ms. Moody has negotiated with the property owner to be donated a small piece of property there, correct?
I believe so.
Yeah, I mean, it's not been done yet, but
Right.
he seems to be receptive to that. But you'd have to go back pretty far, and I'm thinking the houses start.
You wouldn't have to go back far. Not at all, I wouldn't think. By looking at this, you wouldn't have to go far to get you a connecting road back across to the other side.
Yeah, so, we did try and scale the improvement to the problem there. And, like we said, the crash rate isn't particularly high, the level of service isn't particularly poor. So this would be less expensive than that option. But if there was a developer or someone, or the city had funds to do it, then you could certainly, basically what you're, I believe, talking about is instead of that shorter radius just coming through and making it to where it's more of a teed up intersection.
That's true.
Road connection.
Isn't that one of your recommendations, to tee that intersection up?
Yes, I don't know if it's kind of hard to see here, but we've recommended, and again, these are the minimum recommendations, is a 25-foot tangent right there, straight line, and that's because one car length is 25 feet. So that would allow one car to be at the stop sign at a 90-degree angle to the road, and then a 75-foot radius minimum leading into it. And the reason that's chosen is that would be any size truck could make that turn. So we understood that some Dickel trucks sometimes come through this area, and so we want trucks to be able to make that turn.
Mr. Norris?
I have one question, Mr. Story. If you're looking at the numbers up there, your bullet for number 11, the hashed line area that's where you have created a sharper turn going south, northbound on Ovoca. That seems to be completely unnecessary. Unnecessary in that it creates a more sharp turn there, which creates a sharp turn with someone sitting there. It's a safety issue. And so I see no reason for scarifying that road there that's perfect, almost perfectly straight, and creating an unsafe condition.
Well, what we found in traffic engineering is the more pavement you have, the less safe it generally is. And what we would be doing is slowing people down to make that turn, but that would have an adequate radius. Cars, you are correct, would have to slow down, but that really helps with safety versus having someone speed through here too fast. And then if we did bring this in, having this area here where two cars could come in conflict.
Are you going to change the speed zone there? Then how are you going to slow people down if you don't change the speed zone?
I guess I'm sorry.
You say you're not going to change the speed zone, you're going northbound and you've got to make a sharper right-hand turn where it's almost completely straight now.
Yes, sir.
That seems much more safe to me.
Yeah. No, what we found is this is a safer configuration.
Let me make one other point. I drive that road regularly. I have never seen a single accident for a vehicle going northbound on Avoca. And if you'll check the data, I don't think you'll find that there has been an accident going northbound on Avoca. I think that all the accidents will be coming from Riley Creek.
I believe based on the data, let me see here.
I live there too. And
They
I
were
agree.
mostly southbound, but I'm thinking it was 60% southbound.
There's just no accidents on northbound on Avoca. There's no reason for an accident northbound on Avoca because it's a straight road.
Yeah, I'm not seeing the northbound percentage.
So I would ask you to reconsider that issue. So
But this, the way it's designed, you're making a 90-degree angle where there wasn't one, is that correct?
That's correct, that's the whole goal.
And then having this pavement pulled out is gonna force people to go 20 miles an hour because there's a 20-mile-per-hour zone, correct?
Well, it's an advisory speed,
An
whenever
advisory
it's yellow, it's advisory.
Is it possible for us to change the speeds? I know it bumped up to 35 at one point, so having it at 30, especially since there's a lot more driveways down that way now that there were, like 4 or 5 new.
I will say it's fairly, it's not that unusual to have these advisory speed plaques on particular locations. If to the north it is safe to travel 35 miles an hour, you wouldn't necessarily lower that speed limit artificially. You would warn them when they come to a lower speed curve. And then to the south, I believe, is 30. So 20 you'd probably have a lot of people speeding if you lowered the speed limit for the entire route.
But yeah, just right there.
Well,
And I'm trying to remember, it's kind of hard to remember what it looked like before this picture on top of it. So where it's got around the number 5 arrow, that was kind of where it was before, right? Where, as far as where a car would stop. Am I remembering
Yes.
that right?
Yes.
Okay, so that's pushing that backwards towards the north, like, I don't know, like 10 feet? Okay.
Yeah, so certainly we'll take into advisement, but based on engineering judgment, this would be a safer configuration. But if you don't have a northbound issue, I mean, it's your city streets. And you are right, the southbound lane departure is a key element of this to address.
remember, you're creating a sharper turn, which is inherently more dangerous than a straight sector road.
Not in an
That's my
intersection.
comment.
And that's the near-term improvements. And then the long-term is the same recommendations. With the addition, we did look at flattening this curve out, but it was going to have some pretty good impacts on these adjacent homes. So instead, we made a recommendation to come in and pave a shoulder through here. And that way, it would be that added safety factor that if someone did come through too fast, that they have that shoulder to serve as a corrective area instead of running off the road and into a ditch. We would require a little bit of right-of-way acquisition through there. We also would recommend, while you're doing that, to move this utility pole out to get it at least 12 feet from the edge of travel lane, so it's not right up against the travel lane. But back to your comment, you could certainly look with pavement markings to create some islands in here. These are our recommendations, but we would take certainly city comments into consideration for sure.
Ms. Moody, do you have anything to add?
I don't.
Right.
I think Mr. Story and I, we've discussed the data pretty thoroughly, and both were surprised to see the level of service as high as it is today and as high as it will be looking 20 years out. And, you know, so while that was surprising, I would say it was to the city's benefit, because what it told us is the design of the road is pretty good, the intersection's functioning pretty well, and that we don't need to go to the expense of a $600,000 roundabout to make a safety improvement. So in that way, I thought it was a good story to share with you and give you some data back. One thing I thought about the residents in that area, they may be surprised to see the low crash data numbers, but what it tells me is I think there are a number of maybe run off the road or things like that that are not being reported. And it's a good message to our citizens to remind them to report those incidents, because it could be directly related to state or federal dollars for safety improvements on the road if we go ahead and get those recorded in our police department. So those are kind of the messages or the takeaways that I had from the study.
Very good. Anybody have anything else at the time being? Mr. Story, thank you very much for being here tonight. Good job, thank you.
Yeah, and I certainly appreciate too just the quick response. I think that we went from start to finish in about 5 or 6 weeks with this study.
Yeah.
And so we really appreciate that turnaround.
Good. Thank you. Mrs. Moody, anything else to add?
That's all.
Anything else in your report? Okay, we're ready for the consent agenda. We have one item that's in front of you, amendment to grant contract with TDOT for the East Lincoln Elementary Safe Route to School Sidewalk Extension Project. So is there a motion that we add this to the consent agenda, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Norris, second by Alderman Duncan. So all those in favor of adding 1977 to the consent agenda, vote green, opposed, vote red. Motion passes 6-0. All right, so now we have 5 items. Item number 1973, minutes of June 3rd, special call meeting. Item 1974, accept award of $3,450 and authorize mayor to sign the grant contract with the Tennessee Arts Commission to support the 2020 Tullahoma Arts Alive Festival. 1975, approve fire and police department participation in a joint calendar program with Kaywood Publications. 1976, approve annual renewal of software support agreement in the amount of $3,000 between the police department and M&M Microsystems, Inc. for the software and support necessary to collect, report, and transfer data to the state of Tennessee. And 1977, amendment to grant contract with TDOT for the East Lincoln Elementary Safe Route to School Sidewalk Extension Project. So a motion that we approve the consent agenda is presented.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Nolis, seconded by Ms. Keene. All those in favor of the consent agenda as presented, vote green, opposed, vote red.
There you go.
Motion passes 6-0. We have one item of old business, ordinance number 1521, an ordinance of the City of Tullahoma, Tennessee, adopting the annual budget and tax rate for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2019, and ending June 30th, 2020, for the passage of the second of 3 readings. Is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Second.
Proper motion by Mr. Noah, seconded by, I'm not sure who said, Alderman Keene. Any discussion? We got one more shot at this. All those in favor of voting green, I'm sorry, voting in favor of vote green, opposed, vote red.
It's the glasses.
Yeah. Motion passes 6-0. Mrs. Moody, any other old business that's come up?
No other business.
So we've got 3 items of new business. Item ordinance number 1522, an ordinance of the City of Tullahoma, Tennessee to repeal and replace in its entirety 20-1001 building and code administration fees entitled 20-1005 planning and zoning fees of Chapter 10 comprehensive schedule of fees and charges to be effective January 1st, 2020 as shown in Exhibit A for the passage of first of 2 readings. This is in conjunction with the budget. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
A motion by Alderman Duncan, seconded by Mrs. Dunn. Any discussion? All those, again, this is the first of two readings. All those in favor of the ordinance 1522, vote green. Opposed, vote red. Motion passes 6-0. Resolution number 1789, adopt a plan of services and approve a voluntary request for annexation 471 Parkway Place. You earlier, I assume the Planning Commission dealt with this and they approved it. Or
The Planning Commission approved it on April 15th unanimously.
Okay. And we earlier held the public hearing. We've heard from the homeowner themselves, and they would like to be voluntarily annexed. So the chair will entertain a motion to approve resolution number 1789.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Noah, seconded by Mr. Duncan. Any discussion? All those in favor of resolution 1789, vote green. Opposed, vote red. Motion passes 6-0. Resolution number 1790, at the request of Diane R. Graves, who's in our audience, Coffee County 911 Director, consider adoption of a resolution to amend the 1974 interlocal agreement among Coffee County, the City of Manchester, and Tullahoma, and the Coffee County Emergency Communications District to provide for the chairman of the District Board of Directors to serve as an ex officio member of the Consolidated Communications Committee. So let me get a motion and a second on the floor, and I'll defer to Mrs. Moody for an explanation.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Duncan, seconded by Ms. Dillon. Mrs. Moody.
My understanding is that since its inception, it has been a 6-member board, and at this time, they're hoping to add one more seat as a tiebreaker. And it only makes sense that for communication and coordination purposes, that the district board chairman be asked to serve on this committee.
You've heard an explanation. Any discussion? Any questions? All those in favor of resolution 1790, vote green. Opposed, vote red. Motion passes 6-0. Ms. Argers, thank you very much for being here tonight. Yeah, appreciate your continued work that you do. Okay, Mrs. Booty, any other new business?
No.
All right, we'll adjourn and go into the beer board portion of the agenda. First, in the consent agenda, the minutes of June 3rd, 19 BB21. Is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Second.
Proper motion by Mr. Noah, second by Ms. Keene. All those in favor, 19 BB21, vote green. Opposed, vote red. Motion passes 6-0. We have no old business. One item of new business. Consider approval of a beer application, on-premise beer permit for the Wynn Cigar Shop and Lounge, 115 Northwest Atlantic Street. Mr. Scott McCain and Mrs. Wendy McCain as owners and managers in charge of beer sales, subject to final fire inspection. So let me ask one or both of you to step to the podium. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
Yep. So have you received a copy of the beer laws of Tullahoma?
Yes, sir, I have.
Have you read those?
Yes, I have.
Do you have any questions?
No, sir.
All right. Do you understand and appreciate the sale of beer is a very important responsibility in the community?
Absolutely.
Okay. What do you have in place to assure that you do not sell beer to an underage person?
Well, our situation is very unique. We are going to be a cigar lounge and shop, so we are 21 and older. So with that would not allow anyone that's 18 years in there even working. So obviously with that on our door showing that 21 years and older, and we would ensure that me being as the owner, I am the only worker, and I would make sure that I card every individual that comes in there.
I think that's pretty clear. Any questions, Mr. McCain? So we're always interested in new development in Tullahoma, so can you tell us a bit about your operation?
Yes, so our plan is to be a downtown destination. Our location is an amazing situation. We're basically, if you're on the back alleyway looking at Daddy Billy's, we would go into the avenues. Actually, the location is the Rusted Lantern, I believe, is going to be the location. We are going to, my plan is to become a destination, so after dinner, you come in from a nice dinner from 122, you come in there for, a nice cigar. The plan is, as I said, I want to keep everything local. I'm going to provide Old Shed beer in there. That's the only thing that we want to do at this point in time, so basically, it'll put you in the mindset of going back in the Rat Pack, the speakeasy era, have black leather couches, chairs, have a champion room that's in the back that somebody can come in there and sit and they can entertain. If you have a birthday party or something like that you want to come in there, we could handle a bachelor party if somebody wants to come in there and have a nice cigar and watch the games, watch the Masters on Sundays. So we're going to, it's basically going to be a very classy establishment. It's something that's been a dream of mine my entire life.
Wow. Well, we congratulate you on
Thank you.
your dream. Yeah,
Thank you.
that's very interesting. And I agree with you, Tullahoma downtown is becoming more of a destination. And thanks to you and other private investment and public investment as well. I think we're seeing that more and more. I don't know if any of you have an opportunity to travel much downtown, particularly on the weekends, and it's just busy. Yeah. Any other questions of Mr. McCain? Do we have a motion?
How many can you accommodate in your city?
Well, we think that we could potentially have maybe up to 40 at one time. I mean, the front of the section is basically going to be retail. I'll have probably 4 or 5 TVs that are going to be in there. And then there's 2 different sections, a lounge area, and you can actually lounge in the front of the retail area as well. I have made a connection with Daddy Billy's that my current landlord owns 5 feet into the Daddy Billy's patio, so we actually have access that we're going to be able to go out there in that courtyard and utilize that space as well.
Wow. So when do you hope to open?
We get possession on August the 1st. We plan on starting our build out as soon as we get that, and our plan is Labor Day weekend will be our grand opening, definitely in time for the 41A Festival.
Yeah, good. Well, you've heard.
I make a motion to approve.
I have a motion by Mr. Mathis. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Norris. Any further discussion? All those in favor of approving the beer application subject to the final fire inspection? Anything else? All those in favor of the motion, vote green. Opposed, vote red. Motion passes 6-0. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Look forward to seeing you. Thank you. All right, no other business. We are adjourned. Have a safe evening.